I think an issue that Palantir has as a company is a lot of people do not understand what Palantir does, why it's unique, and to them, the company is just a black box. And I think this is a real problem for Palantir. And I kind of get it because it is hard, unless you've specifically worked on big data projects, to understand what differentiates Foundry and Palantir's Gotham from anything else. And so the good way to think of Palantir's products, Foundry and Gotham, is to think of them as a data platform, or even maybe a better way is an operating system for data. Now, what does that mean other than just kind of being like a buzzword? Well, let's take the example of a dairy company. So, a dairy company, they're going to have many industrial farms where they have lots and lots of cows. And the data that they're going to collect on those cows is how much is each cow producing? What are the cows eating? What children do they have? Things like that on the farm level. Then they're going to have tons of data about, the transporting milk from the farm to their different facilities where they basically pasteurize the milk, they bottle it up, give it out to the distributors. And then, they'll have supply chain information, of course, on, what's the cost of grain, what are their contracts at. But this information is spread out all over the place. But the company is like aware, right, that within all of this data, there is an immense amount of hidden value that could be used to, make optimizations to increase the amount of milk production, to maybe decrease cost. And because they know that, they'll try to hire out like basically a software engineering team with some data scientists, where the goal is to let's try to centralize all of this information and start trying to make sense of it. But this is an extraordinarily difficult process. One, you have to, set up this infrastructure to pipe data from each of these industrial farms, into some centralized database, some data warehouse. At the same time, you're going to have to try to connect to different ERP systems within the company to gain, information on like how much grain is costing, your inputs, outputs. It's very complicated, and it could take a software engineering team like 2, 3, 4, 5 years to do this. And at the same time, you're going to be losing software engineers due to the high turnover rate. The data scientists are going to have a hard time, like, getting enough data for the first year to start trying to generate metrics from it, try to get key insights. And so it ends up taking like 5 years to unlock any value. And along with that, these projects will often fail. I mean, they really will. And, everything just kind of falls apart for whatever reason. New manager, too many people leave the team. So this is where Palantir comes in. Palantir says, this stuff is too hard to build. We're going to build it once and we're going to make it so it works for, everybody. And what's really unique about Foundry is you can deploy it at the edge location. So you can deploy Foundry at each industrial farm, right? And gather the data there. And Foundry, even the employees at the industrial farm can actually start using Foundry and look at the data set at the farm, see how they can make optimizations, play around with it. And Palantir is like, their software is very hands-on, but it's very intuitive and easy to work with. And so at the industrial farm level, you can basically have your employees trying to make optimizations there. Then that data can get fed back, right, to basically corporate, where you have Foundry, and it's going to be like more of the centralized system. And that's going to be connecting to your different ERP systems. It's going to be connecting to different databases within the corporation. And it's going to be pulling in all that data from industrial farms. Now, with that, a data scientist can go in and they can start running, out of the box, because Foundry is an operating system for data. They can run machine learning algorithms on it. They can run artificial intelligence. They can describe the data with business, language, essentially. Screwed up the word, but whatever. They can describe the data. And then once they get these insights and they can start generating some hypothesis, this is where like Foundry becomes like explosively valuable. They can run data simulations. And if you've ever tried to run a simulation, takes so much work to set up, and it's very time consuming. But Foundry can just basically use your existing data. You can change some of the input parameters, and run simulations to test hypothesis. So an example of this would be like, okay, well, what happens if we change out our feed? Would that cause, cows to produce the same amount of milk? Because this feed might be 10% cheaper, right? Or if we switch to this feed, will our cows produce more milk? Or if we, switch out what breed of cattle we're using, could that increase our production of milk? There's all kinds of questions that you can ask. And Foundry will help give you those answers by running simulations. And you build applications on top of Foundry, right? So you can have alarms and metrics that get generated. You can build out dashboards. And if you want to do this without Foundry, it is so expensive. The other thing about this is Foundry is truly day one when you get your value right out of the box. You can start integrating because they have all these built-in data integrations that you can make. Are deploying at the edge, so every single factory that a company has can basically spin up their own Foundry instance that will allow people in that factory to look at the data just localized in that area, and then that data will get ported back into a more centralized instance of Foundry where you can look at the bigger picture, right? Because that's what we actually want to do. We want to look at localized data, and we actually want to look at the big picture, both. And those are different contexts. So someone in a factory or at a industrial farm is going to understand their local data, and then of course someone in corporate, they're going to be wanting to get a much bigger overview of the data. So two different things. And hopefully this kind of sheds some light on why Palantir, their software is so revolutionary. I can't really speak to Gotham because I've never worked in defense or intelligence, but I can speak to Foundry, and it is truly remarkable.